Well, welcome back. Our guest today is really a special person, and you probably have seen her on a little network called Fox, but today she's made it big time. She's on the Dove. We have with us Janice Dean. She is the Fox News meteorologist. She's a mom, and she's a children's author, and she is very interested in having your kids talking about bad weather. Now, she's authored a couple of books, Freddie and the Frogcaster. Oh, that's great. And her new one coming up, Freddie and the Big Blizzard. But,
yes.
And there's some pictures of it there on the screen for those who want to check it out. But we have Janice Dean with us today. Hi, Janice. How are you?
Hi, Perry. Good to see you. Good to be on your program today.
Yeah, well, good to see you. What an interesting, by the way, your colleague calls you the weather machine. How in the world did that come about?
You know, that's Shepard Smith,
yeah.
And he's brilliant when it comes to nicknames. And I have to tell you that I think it was probably the first week that I started at Fox, which, by the way, was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
This January. Of course, I was 14 at the time.
Yes.
But I just saw his wheels turning, you know, when we were kind of rehearsing for Studio B at the time, because he was having me on, you know, fairly regularly. They wanted to kind of have him and I have a nice back and forth with each other, and we had a really good rapport. So he was like, Janice Dean, Janice Dean, the weather machine. And from then on, it stuck. Even to this day, you know, more recently this week, we had a lot of weather to talk about.
Right.
And, you know, he could call me the senior meteorologist at Fox, but instead he calls me Janice Dean, the weather machine, which in a lot of ways I love even more.
Well, there you go. Well, that's a great story. How did you ever get involved in meteorology?
So I kind of did it a little bit backwards, but I will say that when I was a kid growing up in Canada, we had a lot of snowstorms. It was very cold, much like the winter that we're seeing here in the Northeast. It's
Yeah.
very reminiscent of me growing up in Canada in the 70s. And I remember we had a couple of really bad ice storms that shut the city down for not days, but weeks. And it really had an impact on, you know, as a child, you see things that are happening. You see people, you know, kind of suffering, and all of the news reports all about the weather that's happening in your town. So I really kind of took a hold over me, and I always had an interest in weather. But again, I did it backwards. I kind of went and did journalism, and I did news. But right out of college, I did weather, part-time weather at the local television station, the CBC in Canada. But I was also doing other things. So I did that kind of as an aside. And then when I moved to New York and they were looking for a weather person for Fox, I said that I had some experience, but that I would go to school while I was doing it at Fox. So I became a meteorologist while I was basically employed at Fox for the first 3 or 4 years of my career there.
Well, good for you. You make it very understanding, let's put it that way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I did other stuff as well as weather. So I was doing news, I was, you know, doing entertainment, I did community events. So I think doing news and television and radio at the same time gave me those skills to have a good rapport with somebody, have a good back and forth, and also have an appreciation for weather as a news feature. I mean, this is a lead story right now.
Well, I was going to ask you, have you ever seen anything like it? I mean, Atlanta just came to a screeching halt. What's happening? Is you see more of these systems developing?
Well, it's been a very cold winter so far, and I think we have 49 days left until spring. I have to check that. But, you know, we've just had these, what I call polar plunges, which is all of this Arctic air that's coming from Canada has moved as far south as the Gulf Coast and Atlanta, Georgia. And this is a once-in-a-10-year event for them. And the National Weather Service did predict a couple of inches of snow, so it wasn't like it wasn't in the forecast. I just think officials didn't really know what to do, maybe thought it wouldn't be as bad. And I also think that it was kind of a big reaction when the snow started to fall and the schools didn't close and people started to get phone calls like, you got to come pick up your child,
right,
or this is coming a little earlier than we expected. Then there was sort of this mass hysteria. Everyone was on the roads, and then everything shut down.
Wow.
It has happened before, and you know, you have to realize that if you live in the Northeast, we're kind of prepared for this kind of thing, but they only have, you know, salt trucks and sanders and that kind of thing it's very limited what they use, and they only typically bring them out every 4 or 5 years. So it could have been more proactive, I think. And I think that officials probably should have called school off the night before. But, it's hindsight. And hopefully moving forward, we can learn from this.
Wow. All right. Now, you're very interested, of course, you write books about this, but you're very interested in children learning about weather, in particular bad weather. Why?
Well, I think it's really important. I bring it back to when I was a child and we had bad weather in our hometown, and children really are very interested in what's going on. I think we have to realize that, and they will remember the things like Hurricane Sandy and ice storms and big storms that shut their city down. And the for Atlanta, those kids are going to remember being in school overnight because their parents couldn't come pick them up, or they couldn't get school buses. So I think it's really important to have kids at an early age understand, have a good understanding of weather and why things happen. Not the science and math part that meteorologists get into when they go to school, but a good acknowledgement of what goes on in the atmosphere and how things can happen. And I think parents certainly can have the discussion with kids, and teachers certainly can have the discussion with children. But there was really kind of a void in the children's book market on bringing weather issues in a book format for kids to understand. So I thought that there was a good opportunity here to bring a cute character like a frog, Freddie the Frogcaster, and he's been interested in weather since he was a tiny tadpole. So the schools that I go to, they really understand what's going on. I think we have to give them more credit where credit is due, and maybe gently introduce these topics to them at an early age so that they can understand why things happen a little bit better.
Wow. So what about Big Blizzard? What's that going to be about?
So I'm excited about Freddie and the Big Blizzard. The first book, Freddie the Frogcaster, is kind of a general introduction to weather and thunderstorms and why that kind of thing happens. But the blizzard is an actual, event that happens in Freddie's hometown, and, how you can prepare for a blizzard with little things like having a winter preparedness kit in your car or at home, and just making people aware that sometimes you can't always count on just the weather forecast or officials. You have to be kind of responsible for how you're going to take action if and when a big storm comes. So I'm really proud of this one. Freddie forecasts this big blizzard. It does come, and what happens and how people prepare. But I also bring up a fun little topic that kids really love, is the green screen that I work on doing the weather.
Right.
People don't realize that I don't really have a map in back of me. It's kind of a virtual reality thing. So if I don't want to give too much away, but in the book, because Freddie is green, obviously, if the screen is green, he's going to disappear and just be eyeballs doing the weather. So I think that's really fun. It's a fun part of doing weather and meteorology on TV.
That's great. Do your boys get it?
They do. Matthew is 5, so he really enjoys the book. Although I will say that we've been to many events with him, and I think he's like, Mom, can we read something else? But that's obviously because he's heard the book so many times. And Theodore, who is my youngest, who'll be 3 in a couple of weeks, he loves the pictures. I have to give a shout out to Russ Cox, who does the illustrations of Freddie. He, really surpassed my expectations of what this beautiful frog could look like. So I'm really happy with the final product, and I can't wait for Freddie the Blizzard to come out. And there is a third one as well.
Oh.
Perhaps you guys will be the first to know that the third one is going to be a hurricane. So we're gonna introduce kids to how they can prepare for a hurricane.
All right. So you got Freddie the Frogcaster, Freddie and the Big Blizzard, and Freddie and the hurricane. You sure that's not a rock group out of the '60s?
That's not a bad idea. But I'm really enjoying this chapter of my life. I really enjoy it, especially going out to schools. Kids are so enthusiastic about weather and talking about weather. So I'm really glad to add this, extra piece of my career, and kind of have it be a part of what I do for a career.
Wow. Well, you're a delight. I think you ought to tell Shep you're not a weather machine, you're a weather event.
Very nice. I'll make sure he knows that the next time I see him.
Listen, by the way, I know that you have been very busy forecasting incredible storms there in the Midwest and in the East, but out here in Oregon and California, we are in drought conditions. I mean, it is serious. We got this high pressure ridge off the coast. It's just not letting any storms through. Have you ever made any connections with the jet stream from Europe to the West Coast and how that brings weather to our area?
Well, absolutely. It's all connected. So when you see an area that's suffering from a lot of cold and snow, I could go across the globe and show you Australia that has been incredibly dry and very warm. It's all connected. It's all about the winds and the patterns. So in our case that you brought up, we've had this huge dip in the jet stream across the east and this ridge of high pressure across the west, and they haven't budged. They have been in that pattern for several weeks, and that's called a blocking pattern. So what you've experienced has been extreme dryness, and typically this is your rainy season. You should be getting a lot of moisture there, right?
Right.
So the good news is that is going to break down a little bit this week. So you are going to get a couple of storms that are going to bring the snow and the moisture you need, especially across the Northwest and Northern California. We really need to get some moisture into Southern California, but this week and into next week, there's going to be a little bit of a breakdown, which is nice, and you will get some of that moisture that you need.
Well, when you get tired of Fox and you want to live in beautiful Southern Oregon, come out here. We need a weather babe.
All right, well, let me know. You never know. You never know where my travels could bring me.
Thank you, Janice. You're a delight. Blessings on you. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to see the hurricane show come.
Absolutely. I'll let you know.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Okay, we'll be right back.